So good morning, everyone. We are broadcasting from everywhere. Our community is in Houston, Texas, which is expecting a hurricane in a day. And we are so pleased to have Professor Kaisu Koski with us this morning. I happen to be sitting in Capitan, New Mexico, and Lama Rigzin will join me shortly. Kaisu is an associate professor of art and design at Sheffield Hallam University. She briefly describes herself as a cross-disciplinary artist with a background in performance, film, and biological materials. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. She is a very dear student, colleague, and friend. And without further ado, I present her.
Thank you, Lama Namgyal, and good morning and warm welcome to everyone in Houston and everywhere. I'm sitting today in the Netherlands, so it's an afternoon for me. Regardless of where you are, a warm welcome to this Eco Dharma talk. It's a privilege to have this platform to continue actually practicing my thinking and creative practice as well, to kind of do this in conversation with the Sangha. So last year I was giving and concentrating on reindeer as a topic of our Eco-Dharma conversation, and this year I'm going to be focusing on bears in a couple of different ways. This will be a little bit of a stream of consciousness talk just because of the stage of the project. I'm in a kind of preliminary stage of working with bears. I'm going to be drawing from Buddhist scholars in a couple of different ways, but also from post-human environmental thinkers such as Timothy Morton and Donna Haraway, as well as my own and collaborative art practice, actually with a visual artist, Penny McCarthy in Sheffield. So we're working on this together. So I'm also in the process of writing a book about these things. So you will be a very dear initial sounding board for my ideas that will be later worked into this book at Peter Lang Publisher as well. So in this talk today, I want to kind of bring forward two interrelated thoughts, and one of which being the human-animal binary that we so often just take it for granted. But actually, I want to challenge that in various ways, with the primary reason that actually that so-called human-animal relationship can be considered as a contributor to the climate crisis and as a bigger manifestation of a relationship problem humans have with the more than human world. The second aspect I want to bring forward is kind of exploring the experience of just right or the middle way. And I'm also gonna do that by weaving in the Dharma viewpoint, but also creative practice, fairy tales, and post-human ecological thinking by Timothy Morton. So these two thoughts hopefully come together somewhat in my practice with Penny. So I'm going to show you some footage that is not of a finished artwork, but it's a work in progress and kind of raw material instead. So after this, I will hand it back to Lama Namgyal for his reflections on these topics. So hopefully end up with somehow coherent narrative. However, there is a second, this is a mini series of 2 talks. So I still have a chance to bring it together in the first Sunday of August. So I hope not to end with a cliffhanger, but we shall see. So starting with the human-animal binary, how to challenge that. So one way to think about it is to see us actually all being on a journey, and it's a shared journey. So we're sharing DNA with other species. There is a genetic ancestry, and Gary Snyder talks about this actually as a 4 billion year pilgrimage that we've all traveled so far. So there wasn't a specific moment in time where we kind of started over, obviously, but we're part of this larger journey and narrative genetically. So that would be our biological lineage, if you like. In another way, and these are familiar to you, so I'm not teaching anything, scientifically previously unknown, but really just like collecting evidence of the blurring the binary and boundary. So thinking of our bodies as kind of a space that has a certain dynamics, it's porous to other beings. So actually only less than half of our human cells in our bodies are human cells. So there's so much microbial cells, including the microbial DNA in our bodies, that it's actually impossible to say where does the human really end and begin. But the third angle I want to introduce into this human-animal binary, and perhaps as Dharma practitioners, the most close or familiar to us in our practice, is that oftentimes we practice generating compassion, bodhicitta, by imagining that all the other beings have at some point in time space been our mothers, and they have taken care of us, and reversely we've also done that. So we've been a giraffe mother in our past lives. We've been a rat baby receiving care from a rat mother, and so forth. So if you really kind of take this, what could be seen as a metaphor, and connect it with this biological ancestry reality, it actually kind of makes sense also experientially. So Morton writes about a lot of how thin and blurred this human non-human binary is. I'm now going to move into the second interrelated topic of what is just right. And in the title, I'm using the term Goldilocks zone, which is actually the Goldilocks principle, which is deriving from the fairy tale Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Not gonna tell the fairy tale at this point because it's widely known, but the basic takeaway typically of that fairy tale is that there is a search and thrive to find something that is just right. Not too cold, not too hot, but just right. Not too hard, not too soft, but just right. And this is, as Dharma practitioners, quite familiar to us because we're told tighten with tightness, loosen with looseness, and find kind of a Goldilocks zone for our own practice, I guess, or the middle way. But really, you could also just ask what is just right for other beings than just humans as well. So in biology, this would be called, I think, homeostasis. So there is an organism, and organism has a natural kind of ability to respond and create an equilibrium in response to a changing environmental circumstance. Now, with the climate crisis, obviously, this is becoming increasingly challenging and in some cases already impossible. So there are clear limits to our ability and other beings' ability to find that equilibrium just right middle way is not anymore achievable. So for a long time, you could say that for humans, this planet Earth, we kind of existed in a Goldilocks zone. So we could kind of carefree, just instrumentalize the resources and other beings and the circumstances and the climate was kind of favorable for our life, sustaining life and growing food and so forth. So we are currently obviously losing that Goldilocks zone. And like in the title, and perhaps I should have flipped the title, because actually we're moving from the Goldilocks zone in this sense into practicing basically tolerance of discomfort. So things are becoming increasingly uncomfortable, if not impossible. Species are also going extinct, our own species included. So this is a serious form of discomfort that is also a challenge to incorporate in our own practice. Donna Haraway encourages us to literally stay with the trouble. And I kind of, in my own creative practice, also Dharma practice, and environmental activism, I do try to take that approach indeed, instead of looking away, while also recognizing the potential in kind of silent forms of activism as well. So in terms of thinking of the discomfort and our practice, I guess even without the climate crisis, there are teachers who encourage actually to embrace the discomfort, if you like. I remember Lama Eric saying, comfort is so overrated. And I think Lama Tenzin also encouraged at some point, like if you're getting sleepy, you could practice in a cold room. So these are ways actually that we utilized our visceral sensory experience to keep us more present and awake, which will further our practice better than being sleepy or drowsy. So now I'm actually moving to the part which is, I would say, if there's something to take away from this talk, it is around this thought. So this is coming from Timothy Morton, who's been titled as philosopher prophet of the Anthropocene, and actually a professor that is based in Rice University. So I'm reading his work with great enthusiasm and inspiration. He also draws from Buddhism to a certain degree, but is at the English department in Rice. Timothy Morton speaks of the middle way in a little bit different ways than we're used to in Buddhism, at least. So instead of middle way being harmonious, perhaps monotonic even, it's just my interpretation, perhaps even boring, like middle way, so it's not really this or that. But actually, he brings in a thought that the middle way, importantly for ecological thinking, is a space where there's room for hesitation, of feeling unreal, uncanny, and perhaps most importantly, and this word is in italics in his book, feeling weird. So middle way as feeling weird is something that really resonates with my thinking and practice as an artist. He doesn't really explicate many ways why. One of the obvious ones in relation to climate crisis being, however, is that when we're facing a catastrophe, feeling unreal, the sense of unrealness of it, is really how we first respond. And climate crisis, if anything, it is a catastrophe. So it would be only natural that we kind of feel estranged, weird, unreal, this can't be happening, which potentially could be a window of opportunity to actually snap out of our everyday kind of sleepwalking modes, more or less, our consumerist kind of state of mind and so forth. But this is something very rich that I'm currently developing my thinking around and emerging from this way of seeing the middle way. So I hope that the art practice I'm soon gonna show you somehow make this more alive. But really, even just before this, I am thinking the middle way is so important and actually part of my daily experience as an artist and Dharma student, because it is something between showing up and obsession.
Mhm.
And it's actually very easy to go both extremes. That's my experience. So either you even don't manage to show up, basically, or you get completely wound up and uptight and it has to work in a particular way. But if anything else in between is the middle way, then there's a lot of range. There's a lot of potential. And actually that is, as far as I've understood, also the Buddhist approach to it. It's not supposed to be boring or monotonic or flatline or anything like that. So it is actually expanding the range, our repertoire of middle ways, perhaps, part of this. So I'm now going to move on to the bringing it together, if you like. So how this comes together in the bear practice with Penny, we're now developing. So I would say, firstly, as an artist, I kind of purposefully stimulate this feeling unreal, feeling uncanny, and feeling weird. I do that partly to kind of train myself in tolerating that experience, also training or stimulating that experience in the audiences of my work. But it is equally and primarily for myself to kind of make myself snap out of my everyday patterns and ways of being. So with Penny, we've been working with imaginary but actually real bears in the UK and in Sheffield, where we're both based. And there is a very well preserved Victorian bear pit, which is an architecture. I'm now going to actually show you a picture of it, where bears were kept as a form of human entertainment. So there's currently no bears, but there is a bear sculpture. But you can see it's a small enclosed space with high walls. And the idea is that the audience was standing, it's like a mini Colosseum, if you like. So the audience was standing upstairs looking downwards at the arena. And there is a rich and traumatic history of bear baiting in the UK. So London has multiple arenas that were used to bear baiting as a form of, it was a very popular blood sports at the time. So why we're looking into the past is because actually the origin of the human, non-human distorted relationships come a long way, and we're still carrying some of the same assumptions and hierarchies. Also because bear pits are still active in Europe and many countries. So this is not just a distant history. Bear baiting, thankfully, as far as I know, is not happening, but I wouldn't guarantee anywhere in the world either. So if you look at this as an environment and think of it through the Goldilocks zone, obviously this is just wrong. It's just plainly all of it is wrong for the bear. As kind of as a beginning to create restorative artistic gestures to kind of to open up new possibilities for future human, non-human relationships. Penny and I are creating images, footage, performances, and I'm now going to share another video clip of our work. So I'm going to speak while this runs. So basically, while we can say that the climate crisis is something that happens to us as a catastrophe, as a potential generator of an unreal, uncanny feeling, we as artists are actually purposefully creating similar types of experiences. So this is from a series of kind of form finding, in finding a relationship with bears, their being with bears, being as if bears. So this bear we talk about in this case of this video is somewhere in between. It doesn't really belong to the natural environment. It also doesn't belong in the urban. So it is somehow uncanny, it's unreal, and it's what Levi Strauss called, it's situated in the wilderness park of imagination. But strangely, it is also real because they have lived in the bear pits, and we know their names, and we know of their lives. So now we're moving to the bear pit, actually. And so the function of the bear suit here, which is a very problematic artifact for us as artists to work with, and in some ways it's completely empty of meaning, really. In some sense, it's very full of meaning, but the meaning is so problematic aesthetically, ecologically, ethically. So there's a lot of tension with this bear suit alone, which makes it very interesting to work with and explore artistically. And finally, in these short clips from the natural environment and the bear pit, I invite you to pay attention to the camera point of view, because the camera lens is really kind of a powerful agent mediating the human, non-human relationship and hierarchies. So there's a wildlife camera, there's a mobile phone, there's a surveillance camera, and all of these are positioning the human in a particular power relation to the non-human. So I'm now going to draw this talk to conclusion. Basically, my few take-home messages, if you like, would be stay with the trouble in your environmental practice and Dharma practice, meaning don't look away or don't wait to practice for a perfect moment to arise to practice. But also, I'm personally aiming to practice even there's no guarantee for a specific outcome. And that's very typical of artists because the impact is so indirect. I'm still going to practice. And thirdly, and maybe most importantly, that making strange, which is a Buddhist practice as well, this type of inquiry, making strange, deconstructing things, and being weird is actually, from the point of view that I'm presenting, could be really, really important and actually just right. So thank you for your attention. I hope this made some sense. I'm going to hand it to Lama Namgyal for reflections. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A bit of a Christmas fruitcake with different kinds of jellies and fruits mixed in. So rich, it's a bit overwhelming to know which one to put one's tongue onto. I have to acknowledge that my middle name is Bear, and so do I say this is a bearable or unbearable presentation? I think most of all, I would highlight the reinterpretation of the middle way in terms of these wonderful words of weird, unreal, estranged, uncanny. And I think that especially if we read Tibetan Buddhist biographies and autobiographies, we could actually find a very, very rich thread, which is exactly that encouragement of the weird, the unreal, the estranged, the uncanny to be occurring in the student by the teacher. I think you correctly identify the goals of practice, Buddhist practice, are ultimately to deconstruct the ordinary and open up our perception and our experience to that which is unusual, fresh, and alive. And I'll just also acknowledge what you're saying is that we are in a human disaster right now, and asleepness is a, dare I say, almost seemingly universal disease afflicting mankind, humankind, womankind, where it's really, really hard for us to take in, acknowledge, and act accordingly with the disastrous consequences of our choices that we've been making for decades. And being able to live with that discomfort is, I think, quite a challenge and necessary. We need to both appreciate that as a kind of race where lemmings all rushing to the edge and literally jumping off the edge. And, you know, there are numerous people, certainly in our country, who are not denying reality over and over in numerous spheres. Of course, significantly with respect to climate change, but in many, many areas. So it's a very disturbing period. I think the fact that you're encouraging a perspective that shakes things up, wakes people up, alerts us to the absence of this binary between humans and other creatures that we share this planet with is so significant and so wonderful. And I just want to encourage you to keep going at it. And I think the only thing I would add that you didn't throw in terms of the non-binary nature, which I offer and encourage, is that all sentient beings share Buddha nature. And so it's not just that all beings have been our mothers, but all beings are similar in sharing a Buddha nature, and therefore do respect and care. And yeah, so what you're doing is terrific, and keep going.
Mhm. Thank
Yeah,
you so much.
thank you for bringing a whole new perspective to life for us. And we will transition.
And let me second that.
Yeah.
Kaisu just heartily second it. And also, since we're not having time for discussion right now, although I think this will be relevant in the next hour to the meditation that we do, folks, if you would like to send feedback to Kaisu, as Kaisu requested, please, I'll just say write me, I'll forward it to Kaisu, if that's all right with you. because
Yeah, thank you. That would be wonderful.
yeah, I know myself. It's when you're writing your creative mode, it's wonderful to get a feedback. So
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you. So take a couple minutes and then we'll come back and do some practice and see how weird, uncanny, or Buddha nature like